At the top of the show, I mentioned the new anti-white racism. It's basically the idea that whites are uniquely racist, all of them, and they need to be deprogrammed, frankly. Even state emergency services staff in New South Wales, who I think actually have more important things to do, like helping their fellow citizens with disasters, they've been sent an email inviting them to a session on Monday week to be lectured by Muslim activists from the Diversity Council of Australia, whatever that is, on their unconscious racism. And she will discuss, for instance, their white privilege, their unconscious bias, and this idea that they have of meritocracy, and so on. This is offensive stuff. I mean, one of my own employers has tried to push something similar too. I found it quite insulting. I spoke earlier with Mark Latham, former federal Labor leader and now One Nation leader in the New South Wales Parliament, and asked him whether this deprogramming actually made us better, finer people.
Well, no, Andrew, it's a political indoctrination campaign according to a certain perspective on diversity, on unconscious bias, on white privilege, all these woke themes. But in terms of the people who'd be undertaking this course or indoctrination program, they work for the New South Wales SES, emergency services people. So you've got to ask, in terms of building capability for emergency services, getting out there in floods, bushfires, other natural disasters, other accidents, to actually save lives, why does it make any difference if someone is committed to diversity, or they believe in the voodoo theory of unconscious bias, or they've got some ideas about white privilege? I would have thought actually denigrating people of a white skin colour in an emergency services circumstance is exactly the wrong thing to do, in that staff have to treat the people that they're trying to help blind to race, gender and sexuality, completely blind to identity politics. The best way to run society, of course, particularly in an emergency circumstance where the objective is to help the citizen and save their life.
You know, I don't mind at all the idea of fighting racism, not at all. But I think what really gets me suspicious about this is that it seems to be centred only on white racism, like as if whites are uniquely racist and everyone else is not. In fact, they're victims. And I'm not sure that that is either true or helpful.
Well, and you've got to look at this organisation running these programs. And Andrew, these are right through the New South Wales Public Service. The Minister in charge here, David Elliott, to his credit, is one of those who takes a stand against them. But the Diversity Council of Australia has at its head David Morrison, who became notorious for saying we can't say the word guys in the workplace. Part of this training program is language control. I'm sure it'll be along the lines of you can't say mum and dad, him and her, he and she. You can't use so-called gendered words. Why has that got anything to do with saving lives in an emergency circumstance at the SES? I mean, this is just political training for people in an environment that's got nothing to do with the thing that the taxpayers are funding, the capacity of emergency services in our state to get on with the job.
Speaking of which, I've got to give a shout out to the emergency services workers who were helping us out in this part of the world where there's been amazing winds and we're clearing the roads. We nearly ran into a tree ourselves this morning, so thank you. I didn't notice any racism there, but maybe I didn't look close enough behind the uniforms. Who knows?
And the good thing about the trees is you don't have to call them him or her, or there's no gendered language about trees. They just do the jobs. There's no gendered language about anything in an emergency circuit. The Diversity Council at the end of the day is about control of the individual, their language, and if you control their language, you control their life. And it's just plain wrong.
Well, speaking of trying to control language, police thought, you bring good news, Mark. A student at a university in Scotland has been cleared after being investigated for claiming that women have vaginas. I know that this is, very strong language on her part, but she was accused of spreading hatred of transgender women by stating a biological fact. Mark, do we consider this a big victory or actually a sign of decline that such a thing could even need investigating in the first place?
Well, it's the sadness about what's happened to university institutions right around the world, that statements are the obvious, that a woman has a vagina, a man has a penis, require some form of academic investigation. I mean, these are just absurdities. And the left-wing people who say follow the science, they throw biological science out the window. The truth is, no matter how much control and manipulation the left try to apply to society, men will never have babies. Babies will be born from women and women alone in our society, and the vagina, of course, is an integral part of being a woman. So, you know, you just wonder how sick these universities can be that they try to rub out people for statements of the obvious.
Well, it's starting to sound like that skit in Monty Python, Life of Brian.
I want to be a woman. From now on, I want you all to call me Loretta. What? It's my right as a man.
Well, why do you want to be Loretta, Stan?
I want to have babies.
You want to have babies?
It's every man's right to have babies if he wants them.
But you can't have babies.
Don't you oppress me.
I'm not oppressing you, Stan. You haven't got a womb. Where's the fetus going to gestate? You're going to keep it in a box?
Here, I've got an idea. Suppose you agree that he can't actually have babies, not having a womb, which is nobody's fault, not even the Romans, but that he can have the right to have babies.
Good idea, Judith. We shall fight the oppressors for your right to have babies, brother. Sister, sorry.
What's the point?
What?
What's the point of fighting for his right to have babies when he can't have babies?
It is symbolic of our struggle against oppression.
Well, we stand in united solidarity with men who want to be women and want to have vaginas but can't.
Mark, it's just terrible. We're actually living in a satire now, except it's not that funny when you actually have to live it for real. Mark, well, the New South Wales Liberal government has an energy minister, Matt Keane, who strikes me really more like a Greens MP instead. I mean, it's like the Liberal Party's become a cuckoo nest, you know, just for strange birds to inhabit instead. He's very, very hot on global warming, but does he really know what he's talking about when it comes to talking about solutions, supposedly?
No, what's happening here in New South Wales, and indeed around the country, Andrew, is that Australia's involved in a radical experiment. The rest of the world looks at us as, well, they're kind of the canary in the coal mine. They're going down the path of 100% renewables faster than any other part of the world. And this is a radical experiment in, can you keep the lights on? Can you power up a modern economy and give people jobs and prosperity when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing? What keeps the lights on? And the big feature that Matt Keane has promoted in New South Wales is pumped hydro. The idea you've got a dam at the top of the hill, a dam at the bottom, and pumping to send the water up and down and creating electricity. And I've revealed to the Parliament today documents inside his own department saying his pumped hydro schemes are described as off track, needing Plan B. He had a scheme there for pre-investment studies of pumped hydro opportunities in New South Wales, and nobody's taking up those opportunities. So it's a big, big problem for how you keep the lights on. It's one of the reasons Angus Taylor, federally, has had to bail out Matt Keane. The absence of pumped hydro means that we desperately need the gas peaking plant at Curry and also the extended one in the Illawarra. So fossil fuel energy generation through gas peaking needs to be an essential part of the electricity grid in New South Wales, otherwise the lights go out. And this just exposes the absurdity of Matt Keane in thinking that you can keep electricity flowing without fossil fuels of any description. He has said New South Wales will get rid of them by 2035, and the documents revealed today just show how foolhardy and reckless he is. It's the recklessness that's most disturbing.
Look, what I don't get, Mark, is that the bottom line is all this will actually do nothing, because we're so small, nothing to stop global warming, which isn't really a problem because it's so small, the warming, and the benefits so far way outweigh the negatives. Absolutely true. I mean, just look at the evidence around you. Record grain crops. This is just such a fool's errand, but you're describing a fool. So here's a pig in clover, Mark Latham. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thanks, Andrew. Cheers.